Super Metroid is one of the most iconic soundtracks of any Super Nintendo game. Its haunting sounds and subtle use of timing helped establish it as a groundbreaking entry into the video game music canon. The unpredictability of the soundtrack itself gave the player the uneasy feeling that they never really knew what was around the corner. Yet the stark contrast between the tunes helped the player feel firmly established in each new area. This all coming at a time when the music of games was thought of as nothing more than just a collection of jingles. In this series, we're going to dig into what made this chilling soundtrack so unique. Part 1 will be focused on the cryptic nature of the music's minimal textures and ambiguous tonal centers. The first tune we'll be looking at is the opening you hear when you fire up the game. Let's check it out here. So right away we hear two of the most common techniques of this game's music. We get a drone and a tritone. The tritone, being just shy of the perfect fifth's grandeur, gives the track an immediate sense of tension and despair before quickly accelerating into the main theme. Here we get a beautiful example of the game's ability to evoke an unsettling mood through a simplistic approach. A simple half-note melody devoid of any virtuosity, this tune avoids catchiness and instead gives the game's musical language a sublime veneer of edginess. The next piece we're looking at is the planet Xenos theme you hear when you exit the ship for the first time. Let's check it out here. We get a pretty vague sense of tonality in this one. Despite the odd G natural in bar 5, I hear this piece in E flat minor. However, I think worrying about chord changes or key signatures in this piece isn't so important. Rather, this piece is built more around the motive of the half step. Like its bigger cousin, the tritone, the half step has an instant sense of stress to its sound. However, unlike the tritone, it will generally sound resolved if it's going up. This is because we will likely hear it as a leading tone going up to the tonic. And with the slow harmonic rhythm of this piece and the little amount of activity going on, each one of these half steps going up could feasibly be heard as a tonal modulation. The long held out notes and unstable tonality is common in many suspense and horror films, and it's likely that much of this game's music was probably inspired by the music of the movie series Alien, as the Metroid creator Yoshio Sakamoto described the movie as a, quote, huge influence. This ambiguity creates a world where the player feels a little more than alienated, as they wonder if this new planet they've arrived on will give them any clues as to what's going on or where to go next. Next on our list is the Criteria theme that starts when you encounter the space pirates. Let's check it out here. Here we know we're in some sort of C tonic. The bass is oscillating between C and B flat in a common tonic to subtonic pattern, and the C octaves in the voice helps reinforce this piece squarely in C. The F sharps in both the voice and the melody convince me that we're actually in some sort of Locrian mode. I say some sort because we don't actually get the D flat we'd expect, but rather a D natural in the opening scalar figure. In fact, this scalar figure outlines a Lydian mode rather than a Locrian mode. However, this pattern is short-lived, and what we're primarily hearing in this piece is the tonic subtonic in the bass and the tritones in the voice and melody. And with little else happening in this piece, it actually manages to stay pretty well grounded in the elusive Locrian mode. The next piece is the upper Norfair theme. Let's listen to the main melody here. So here we see a piece again in Locrian. Utilizing that distressing tritone that gives the mode its flavor, this musical track ranks as probably one of the most ominous of all the game's themes. The fact that it does so in Locrian is kind of impressive. Aside from metal bands that routinely live in Locrian, MIDI artists seldom stay in it for very long. There's no perfect fifth in Locrian, which makes it difficult to anchor the tonality, and when you try and play a melody in Locrian, you often just hear the notes resolving to the closest common mode like Aeolian or Ionian. Now this doesn't sound very resolved, and you probably want it to take a whole step down to here. Yeah, that sounds a little bit better. But now listen to it again with a strong B and subtonic of A being reiterated. Yeah, that sounds a bit more resolved. The upper Norfair theme employs a similar technique, with the pedal tone being constantly reiterated. In doing so, it helps keep itself in Locrian without sounding like it's straying to another key. So the next piece we're checking out is the Metroid Sand theme. Let's listen to it here. So in this piece, we know we're in some sort of D tonality. The bass pedal tone is on D and it's reiterated over and over again. The figure here outlines a D major triad without the fifth, but then quickly switches to a D minor triad outlining a D harmonic scale. These two bars would be considered a split third chord as they outline both the major and minor chord. For example, a chord built on C would have both E and E flat to make it both a major and a minor chord. However, D harmonic minor wins out here as the upper melody outlines that scale exactly. What's most interesting here is what's going on with these major third dyads. We see here that these figures are planing rigidly. Now, planing is essentially when two or more notes move in parallel motion, and I say they're planing rigidly here as they strictly stay major thirds, rather than changing to minor thirds to accommodate the key signature. The French Impressionist composer Claude Debussy was well known for harmonic planing. Here in his second Prelude, he utilized a very similar sound and technique to the one we just heard. The next piece we're looking at is the Meridia Rocky Underwater theme. Let's listen to it here. This theme is the most harmonically driven piece we've seen in the series so far. And although this tune might be the prettiest of the game, it still manages to sound quite menacing, thanks in large part to the tritone once again returning as a central interval. This nasty note helps add the spicy flavor to the main opening melody. However, despite the prominence of the tritone in this piece, the tonality does not sit in Locrian this time. Rather, we hear this piece constantly modulating. These modulations aren't simple stepwise modulations either. In fact, the first is from E flat minor to A minor, a modulation that occurs a tritone away from the original key. Unconventional modulations like this one give the piece a sense of instability and mystery. What's not as ambiguous here is the way in which the main melody develops. The opening phrase is sequenced down a step in bar 7, and then again in bar 9. What's most interesting here is that the melody sits differently in the key from bar 5 to 7. While the first note, B flat, in bar 5 is the dominant scale degree of E flat minor, it descends to A in bar 7, which is the tonic of the new key A minor. When it drops again to G, it is the dominant scale degree of the new key C minor. In bar 13, the sequencing continues, and so do the modulations. We get a variation of the opening phrase with the second pair of eighth notes being changed into a whole note. Again, the phrase is sequenced twice. This time, however, the sequence is going up rather than down. This ascent gives an increase of tension in the piece. At the climax of this tension, the piece returns to E flat minor. This piece exemplifies what made the soundtrack so alluring. The simplified texture and unclear tonality gives the piece a sense of isolation and mystique. Thanks for watching The Big Boss Theory. If you liked what you heard today, hit the subscribe button. You can find full scores to all the pieces heard today in the description below, as well as a link to the artist who provided the amazing cover art. You can also check out my own video game music on the SoundCloud link below.